Hello everyone and welcome back. We're continuing along with this piece here. We got quite a bit of work done in the last part. It was definitely a bit of a longer part, so I might make this one a bit shorter. I guess we're just going to kind of roll with the punches for now, but we do have to finish this off and then complete the other side, connect the two, and then we're back on track to working on the centerpiece. One thing I do want to note though before continuing on is I guess I just kind of found out today that my upstairs roommates play the violin, and they're good, but it's just it really picks up on the microphone. So if I seem to be doing a couple more jump cuts or edits, they've been playing on off and on all day. They seem to be chilled out now, but it's really like obvious when I'm recording this kind of stuff. So I might have to edit that out. So hopefully nothing happens, but we'll see. Anyways, yeah, so we left off in the last chapter making this piece here. I think I have an outlined version of it. So what we need to focus on now is a sort of circular connection piece. The way that we have this set up is two separate pieces connected here. And if we look at this image, it seems that the one in the front has a bolt, and then the one in the back is connecting that large circular ring piece. This is a good image for it. This is at least how I'm interpreting it. I really do wish when I was making this model that I would have this sort of typewriter right in front of me to directly reference, but it kind of like that's how I'm interpreting it. This we can sort of have the larger ring shape coming out of, and then we weld it or bolt it down into it, which should be no problem at all to make. One thing I do want to do though is make these a little bit thicker, like specifically up here. Seems like the reference has these guys being a little bit bigger. I think it's just because theirs seems a bit shorter in general, so it might be as simple as grabbing these guys here and stretching it out. Something like that might make that shape a little bit more. But anyways, we're going to be taking this cylinder and I'm going to detach it for now. The reason these two are together, if you guys remember, is because just so we know where they're sort of relevant to each other. Before I detach them, I just want to make sure they're in a position I'm happy with. It seems to go up, so I'm trying to find I think this side is easier to sort of gauge what's going on. So we'll just go off of that. It definitely seems to be a little bit larger in scale. And honestly, we can just mirror it over afterwards, so I'm just going to detach that for now. Center our pivot, freeze all of our transformations and history and all that stuff. And let's go ahead and start attaching this piece. I'm going to go ahead and do our typical poke face, so I can vertex snap this guy to the center. It seems to have taken some damage from previously how we had it set up, so I'm just going to select all the edges on the left, all the edges on the right, and use our bridge tool to connect that. And of course, go ahead and delete those since we don't need them. So let's work on welding this guy into place. It does come up and then sort of have this shape that's morphed into it. We should just focus on getting the cylinder into place. And it does seem rather large and thick, but I kind of want it to be flush on this side, and then it can sort of come out a bit more as it goes down. A back view is also pretty good at seeing what's going on here. So it's a cylinder, but it also has these round pieces coming out, which we can worry about after. It's just good for us to sort of get a gauge of the thickness of the whole thing, which we're just going to start with something like that. And of course, it's super flexible. We can fix all of that later. I'm just going to line it up so it's flush with the end here. Grab these verts and just kind of raise them up so the transition's a little bit easier. Pull it forward so it's actually cutting in. And then we can go ahead and start welding these guys. So we're not going to need any of these faces, so I'm going to delete those. And then we can isolate these and start cutting like we've done before. I'm just trying to make sure that I want it to be flush and maybe not something like that. Just double checking. I guess it would probably be easier to have it coming out like this. Yeah, I think all in all it would just make for an easier experience. And then with this guy, I think it might actually be a better idea to have it back a little bit, just for how we connect it over. We don't want it to be overlapping with this round piece because it's going to be having this sticking out of it. So that's how I'm at least interpreting the whole thing. I'm going to rotate this so that we can have these lines connect. It's just going to save us a bit of a headache later on. Yeah, and let's go ahead and start cutting these shapes out. Cool. Just going to select these faces and delete. Just going to vertex snap these so that they're flush horizontally. And then from here we can actually grab these ones and snap them into place. Now obviously we're missing an edge here, so we're going to have to go in and do a cut like this just so we have some more geometry to weld it with. Cool. We can now grab these, snap them in, and everything has a proper place. Go ahead and mesh combine, merge all those vertices, and that should be good. All we really have to worry about is, first of all, these should be attached. I guess at some point I deleted that, but just closing this off by adding in some edges. Cool. Yeah, so on this side, it seems to be just sort of like pushed over and welded to the second bar, while on this side, it seems to have a bolt that's sticking in. Something to note is that these are two different typewriters. So in this case, it kind of gives us the freedom to choose kind of either one we want. I'm just kind of observing the overall shape. I'm really liking all the different bolts. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. Really simple, just mimicking the shape I see in the reference. I'm just going to go ahead and, whoa, something seems to be off here. I'm going to merge these vertices. Yeah, just by beveling them and turning the segments up, we can make this really round. I'm going to go ahead and delete these ones that are a bit too close to each other. And then we can go ahead and punch our hole in, similar to how we did here, and just sort of stick a screw through. So of course we're going to be doing a Boolean for that. Just going to go ahead and do what we were doing before and just kind of borrow this shape using a Smart Mesh duplicate face. Very useful tool. As you can see, like I always end up coming back to it. So let's bring this guy over. delete the end again. Let's isolate these two so we don't have to worry about everything else. And for these booleans, as I've said before, we're going to have to fill these holes at the end. Just selecting the edge loops and hitting the fill hole with a shift right click. Let's get this all centered up. Gonna have it going through both sides. Which I mean, for this case, I should probably get rid of these edges because they're just gonna cause us a bit of a headache as we do that. It also seems like I should lower this a little bit because it's not quite even on both sides. This seems to be much higher than this. It might just be because it's smaller, but regardless, I want it centered through both pieces. Okay, cool. I'm trying to think, would there actually be a hole on the other side of this? I feel like it just needs to go through this far and not out the other end. So we have a screw going through, being attached into here. Right? You'd screw into this? Or no, I guess you would have a something to bolt it down on the other side. We're just going to cut all the way through and we could fix it if need be. So, typical Boolean. Select one, shift select the other. New Boolean operation. And delete history and base objects. Cool. We got that in. I'm just going to hit an auto smooth. Yeah, and let's just get our bolts into place. We already have a bunch of these floating around. So I'm just going to duplicate and just position these guys. I'm going to have this one sunken in a little bit more just for some variety. And though like the other side would probably be a bit of a different, like a ratchet or something, I guess, for the sake of this, since we're probably never going to see the other side, I'm just trying to get some visual information over there. And just stick this guy in. I mean, I guess I could probably take the ratchet from one of these and stick it on the end. But I think the bolt's just going to read better. And realistically, no one's kind of looking at this part of the model. I don't even know if it's visible once everything's in the back. I just want it to make sense if someone does stick a camera in there. It just sort of has something. But then, of course, we're going to need our metal piece connecting the two. So we can go ahead and stick this in there. Just vertex snapping it so it's centered. And just sort of adjusting the scale a little bit. Cool, so now we have this sort of metal piece attaching the two, screwed in on both sides. As far as this actual piece goes, the shape of it is an interesting one. So it's a cylinder that's hollowed out because we're going to have like a, let's see, hollowed out because we're going to have this piece sticking out of it. But it's also rounded on the back. Where's that back image again? Yeah, it's rounded on the back with these sort of bolts sticking through. So what we're going to have to end up doing is, first of all, we got to ensure the thickness is correct. I feel like we could probably afford to make it a little bit bigger. I'm just trying to select these end faces. So we're going to have to add this rounded part on the top, which should be pretty easy, and we're going to be using a Boolean operation to do that. Yeah, that works. But yeah, what was I getting at? Yeah, it needs to be hollow because we have this rounded piece sticking out of it. And also just looking at these, it does seem like it is welded over in this one, and I like how that looks as well, even though this has the screw. We might just be able to do a combination of the both. Honestly, if we just hit Control E and extrude this a little bit, like we can just delete these faces and bridge it over. We're kind of getting the best of both worlds with this design. Yeah, so I'm liking that. Yeah, let's just make this hollow, just so we have sort of a base to work with. Yeah, it has this pipe going through. We don't have that set up yet, so I'm just gonna, this is like a rough estimate. We'll get the actual size in after we make the corresponding piece on the other side. But this will just have to do for now. We can't make it exact if we don't know exactly what it's interacting with. But what we do have to do is get this sort of bump on the back, and it seems like it has this sort of split, which should be pretty interesting. There's a lot of booleans going on here. So we have a cylinder that's facing down with the cylinder booled in top, cut in half with the cylinder cutting through for a screw. That's an interesting shape. Definitely a bit of a challenge as far as hard surface goes, but a good challenge. So we're gonna need another cylinder. I've probably said that about a million times in this tutorial already, but we're gonna grab another one of these guys, and I just want to make sure I'm getting the size of this right. I feel like these are looking much larger, but I guess if I zoom out, yeah, I guess they are feeling a bit bigger. That shouldn't be too hard to accomplish. Just by selecting all these faces. I don't want any of these edges to be affected. Maybe a bit smaller still. That might have been too much. Kind of like that seems right. It's hard to tell because this has so much stuff on top of it and around it, that this kind of looks awkward and out of place. But I think once we start to fill it in, it'll be a little bit better. I'm just going to keep it like that for now, and we can build around it. So yeah, let's get this cylinder into place. Let me get a good reference. Just looking at it this way. So it's actually facing kind of like so, sticking out. Interesting. I do like how it is sort of, it seems to be rounded and then curve around, so it's not like I have to get it perfectly lined up on the edges. It can kind of be more like that. I'm going to have to add in a little vertice to get this all lined up. And let's see exactly how big we need to make this. Seems to be quite thick, but then it's cut in half. So just trying to get it into position. And then I think it'd be easier to cut in half before we boolean it. So I'm just adding a cut here, Control B to get a bit of a slice in there, pretty thin one. Delete that guy, and let's actually isolate this so we can give it some attention. So I don't want these bottom pieces to affect the boolean. Like I don't want them sticking through, so I'm going to get rid of those. And in doing so, we're going to have to do a little bit of cleanup. Deleting these bottom faces. But then since we're booleaning, we can't have this be open. So I'm going to be bridging and filling the hole, bridge, and fill hole. So now when we do a unison, it should properly attach everything. I'm just going to give that a bit more breathing room. I'm scared when we dynamesh it, it's just going to morph into one. And I also just want to scale the whole thing a bit more like this. And then I guess that subsequently widened that a bit too much. So looking at it far, yeah, we're getting the same general shape, which is good. Let's go ahead and boolean it. But before we do that, we should always save. Okay, boolean, select them in either order. It doesn't matter for this one because we're switching to a union operation. New boolean operation, clean up, delete history, and base objects. So now it's one. It's good because it's kind of merged. Well, it is merged. We're going to have to do a little bit of cleanup because as you can see, just some awkwardly placed geometry. Oh man, what's going on up here? I'm going to undo the boolean. It seems that this seems I cut off a bit too much of the back for us to scale it up that much, but this should still be fine the way it is. I'm going to do that again. Okay, so now let's just give this a bit of love with a bit of a cleanup. What is the best way to do this? I guess we can start here. By merging all these over. We're not going to need them. What is going on? This is why booleans can sometimes be a headache. We have tons of vertices here that just aren't doing anything. So I need to kind of find them a home. Just dragging them over to the closest vert that kind of makes sense. Yeah, same with down here. I guess what it might have been was when I filled this hole, it kept the original vertice placement, and I just didn't notice. Either way, we're going to have to get rid of them. Okay, let's merge. And then there's little things like this where it's just like, it would just be better if that was attached there and that was attached there. Maybe there. This can come down. Just sort of repeating all the way around. Okay, we can go ahead and merge. So now if we hit 3, it's definitely not perfect. Just want to make sure we don't have any holes in the geometry. It's kind of the main concern. So I'm just going to close this off where I can. Just don't really want any n-gons anywhere, or any faces with more than 4 sides or anything like that. It's getting better. I'm just hitting 3 to test the smoothing and see what happens when it's very, softened out. We're getting some weird stuff going on here. But I think it should be fine because it is all attached. So when we bring it into Zbrush and soften it, it should work properly. I'm going to go ahead and cut the hole through here that we have to do now. It also seems like this gets thinner near the top, so I kind of want to grab these, change our scale tool to component. You can hit B for soft select. And then once again, holding B and clicking with the middle mouse and dragging, we can change our radius for it. And it doesn't seem to like... There we go. I just kind of want to scale it in like that. I'm just kind of matching how it seems to go in a little bit. Yeah, that seems to be good. I'm gonna turn it off by hitting B again. And I just want to make sure that these are even. I think they definitely seem a little slanted now. Just rotating them back into place. And now we can sort of put our hole through there. Fill it with some screws, and that'll do it for this whole part. That should be done. So we're going to need a cylinder to do that. We can continue to copy from this guy. It might even be useful to just keep some geometry back here that I can just duplicate and bring in. This is working out fine for us right now. Fill those holes on the end. And then we're just going to have to isolate these guys and line it up. We're just going to be punching it through. Should be pretty easy for you guys at this point. I do want to take these and scale them in a bit more. Okay. So we can just rotate this, scale it. This is actually really good because since we used snap rotation when we put these cylinders into place, I was able to snap this to the perfect angle for us to cut through with. Okay, that seems pretty lined up. So let's just do our Boolean. I kind of want to shrink it a bit actually. Okay. Man, this is going to be a nightmare of vertices in about 10 seconds if I don't move that into the middle. Okay. So let's go ahead and do this. I feel like this could really break our mesh, so let's go ahead and save first. And the reason I say it can break our mesh is because we just have all of these edges here, and we have a bunch of edges coming really close, especially if the vertice that I moved was still here. There would just be so much intersecting stuff that it'd be just a hassle to clean up, and yeah, I'd just like to avoid that if I can. So we're using a difference this time, cutting through, clean up, delete history and base objects. And then yeah, let's just try and clean this up a little bit. Yeah, we just have vertices so close to other vertices. So that should do that. Go ahead and merge. This side will be good because there was no edges, so we can just skip right to the back. And that should do that if we merge it. Yeah, so this is a little bit off. Okay, cool. Yeah, so now when we smooth it, like it looks really awful, but when we smooth it in Zbrush, it should look just fine. We can go ahead and put a screw in there, and then that'll do it for this. I'm not worried about capping anything in here, just because when we bake it down, there's not going to be anything that we can even see in there, most likely. Let's go ahead and rotate this 45 degrees. Excuse me. Let's see, I kind of want to just average that face out. Or maybe not. I'm going to let Zbrush take care of that. Let's get this in here. I'm going to want to tuck it in a bit because I definitely want to smooth this piece a lot. And then of course, do the same on this side. Cool, and that rotation seems to be a little off first. And that should be that whole part. So that does it for this side. We got the springs, we got the bolts, everything's connected properly. Yeah, definitely a massive improvement on the little swoosh we were having before. I guess I was definitely a little too reliant on this 3D model, which I've been looking at less and less. But we just made this sort of black swoosh. Might be easier to see on this side. Yeah. This black swoosh piece, which did a good job of letting us line everything up, but definitely not as accurate as a real typewriter. So yeah, we got our purpose out of it. It didn't take too long to set up the first one we did. So yeah, now we're on to the second side. And if we look back at our reference for it, we can definitely reuse a lot of what we've already made. So this ring piece is going to be the same. This base is definitely a lot more simple, where it's just totally squared off, and then it's rounded here where this bolt sort of connects through, and then it connects back up top. So I'm tempted to just be like, let's copy it over, and that brings up another point. I'm going to have to stitch this on once we're done, so that it smooths properly inside of Zbrush. Because we want this to be one piece of metal. But we don't need to worry about that now. I'm just going to hit Control D and drag this over. So yeah, it's like most of the way there. So we shouldn't take too long putting this together. I'm going to have to poke face. Vertex snap that into position. Now we can get rid of this guy. And let's see, there's definitely going to be some stuff we have to undo as far as this side goes. I think the first thing is this here. Actually, before I delete that, let's just take a better look. So this definitely has this rounded piece with a bolt. So yeah, I guess we're gonna have to delete that. I do have an idea as to how to handle this though, because if we just vertex snap this over, it's already on the rounded piece, which is nice, which means we just need to close off this hole and then extrude up and have it bolted into place. So if I add a cut here, select these guys, extrude up, sort of get it roughly into the position we had before, we can then just take these faces, snap them so they're flush here. I guess we should probably do that with this ring as well. And we sort of have the same thing, but now it's connected to this new piece we're putting on. I'm going to want to make this a bit thicker though. So I'm just going to try and select these front vertices. Pull it forward. Pull the bolt forward. And let's go ahead and start cleaning this up a little bit. I'm going to grab these. Snap them to the side where we don't need them. Same with these extra edges. If we don't need them, might as well merge them in. Merge vertices, not to center. I think actually for the front, let's get rid of these edges. That way we can bevel this with no issues. And that's looking pretty good. Everything kind of has a home for itself already. Okay, so then with this, what we're going to have to do is end up plugging these holes, which is always a pretty quick fix. Just have to end up deleting these, select the ring, and fill hole. Doing the same on this side, and then we can just shift right click and go to merge face to center. Yeah, and then we just have this vert which we can bring down. Just hitting G, which should repeat last command. Maybe I hit delete, which undoes that. But anyways, yeah, that's essentially how I get rid of holes like that. Once again, delete the geometry, fill the hole, and then with the face selected, I'm holding shift and right click and going to merge faces to center. And then we can just snap that somewhere and merge the faces, or merge the vertices. Sweet, so that plugs that guy up. We're gonna have to do the same here, and then it kind of just seems like it's boxed. Like it's just boxed and then goes up. It does sort of have this line through the middle, which we can add in really easily. But yeah, those, once we got the first part in, became way, way easier to deal with. So that's nice. I'm starting to think if I should have kept this hole here, actually. Just this side, though. Yeah, we're gonna keep these holes. Because we're gonna need to put a bolt in there. And it's giving me an issue. Bridge, error, not the same amount of edges. What if we just do 1 and then... Interesting. So there's an extra edge somewhere on one of these sides. I'm gonna guess it's this. Still interesting. I guess we're just gonna manually bridge it until we find our mistake. Well, there's lots of geo sticking out in weird places here. Probably should have just hit Control Z a bunch of times, but we're in too deep. Yeah, it's just because there's a lot of this like misaligned geometry caused by booleans. Pretty easy to do manually though. Okay, so now I can explain what I was talking about. We need a bolt in here because this is connecting to something. So we need to show that it's connecting by having it screwed into place. Just going to use that vertice as a place for us to snap this to. Okay, cool. We should probably take care of this before we move on. We've already done this one before, so it's pretty quick and easy. Just gonna copy this cylinder over just to get a cut in with. Just cap these holes. And then Boolean difference. For some reason it didn't fill it in. That's kind of weird. But it takes 2 seconds just by extruding and filling hole. Get that guy in there. And we're back to how we were, but just definitely in a much, much better place. All we have to do now is box off this whole section, add this cut in, and that'll do it for this part, and that's a pretty quick fix. I'm just going to fill in these holes like we did before, because we just don't need them for anything. Oh, right. Delete. Okay, fill hole, fill hole, fill hole, fill hole. Merge face to center. Let's get all those merged down. This one is interesting. This one's going to need a bit more work. Let's just select the vertices and merge the vertices to center in this case. Gives us the same result, and then we can just snap these guys to a better position. So with that done, we can probably just cut off the whole bottom piece. Maybe not that much. And we can just delete these interfaces for now. Yay. This was a different hole we put in on just one of the sides, so I need to give it the same treatment where we just sort of merge it down. But yeah, to get this shape, it's this right about here just boxes down. So we can really just get rid of a lot of this unneeded edge geometry. And all we really have to do is get rid of these two. All we really have to do is pull this down, yeah, and have it level here, and that's more or less the shape. We're gonna have to kind of adjust the height of it. There's just so many vertices everywhere. It's a bit of a pain. But yeah, just adjust the height so it's not doing anything like that where it's clipping in. But this seems pretty accurate because it's just like at the tip here. I can see it's clipping in, so we'll have to adjust that in a second. But that's pretty much it. This round part seems to be a bit lower, but it's not something we can really adjust. Nor do I think it would really make that much of a difference. Like, I can put it here and then sort of raise these parts up. Yeah, something like that. Okay, here comes the fun part, is capping all of this off. And to do it, I'm going to isolate each half, do it half at a time, just because I need to be able to get my camera in between the two pieces. So I'm just selecting the faces on the first half, going into isolation mode. And my technique for this is I'm just going to extrude out, change my pivot to the corner, and then just snap the corner to where it needs to be. And then once again I can hit D, click off, and that resets the pivot. For something like this, I can simply just bridge over. So this side seems to be fine. It's mostly now this that's kind of a concern. So this is open, which is fine because it's connecting to a different piece. The stuff underneath of it, not so much. We're gonna have to bridge that over, and then this should be as simple as a fill hole. I think it worked. It's just, yeah, it's not showing it in isolation mode. We're also gonna have to copy over these screw pieces. But yeah, let's do the same thing for the other side. Grab an edge, extrude out, move our pivot to the corner and snap. Bridge these pieces over. This one looks a little bit less fun to deal with, if I'm totally honest. We should still be able to just bridge that. Fill hole, which should be filled, we just can't see it. And then same here. Yep, okay, cool. So that's that. Let's get these pieces from the other side and duplicate them over. Cool. Same with these screws here. Gonna vertex snap them to the middle. Yeah, and that should do it for those two different parts, minus a little bit of cleanup. For this guy, I think it's going to be easier to make this less thick. Okay, and then I kind of want to play with the... Okay, we should probably merge vertices on that. This side definitely seems to be a harsher angle, so I'm going to pull that out a little bit. And then pull this in, because I don't want it to be too far past the little knob we have there. Something a bit more akin to that. As for the cut in the middle, that would probably be a cut along here. So first I want to lower this. No, it isn't even. I'm looking at the reference. It's just sort of a cut like from here to here, maybe. All we essentially have to do is slice this into two pieces, which there's a bunch of different ways to do that. The easiest way would probably be to press spacebar to go into our side view, spacebar again. We can isolate this guy, hit Control-Shift-X to have our cut tool, and we can literally just cut a line through. I just want to make sure I'm doing it in a good spot. I'm holding Shift to get it exact. Weird, it's not cutting anymore. Interesting. I'm not sure what that bug was, but that cut through now, which is fine. I can clean it up a little bit by just snapping these verts. Merging the vertices, then all we're just going to do is detach the bottom, make it its own piece, and then that way when it's in Zbrush and we add a bit of a soften to it, we'll have a little bit of a seam there where the softening wraps around the edges. So I'm going to extract these faces, let's combine the bottom pieces, and the top should be fine. But essentially all we have to do is make sure we fill this hole. And then of course, like, it's going to be one piece in the low poly, so I'm not worried about geometry at all. That's why I'm just going for a fill hole, fill hole. And then I do want to bevel this a little bit just to ensure it gets a better roundness. And that's it for those pieces. It's starting to look a lot more complex, which is really nice. The only thing left to do is weld them to the top, and I think that'll do it for this part, which is great. I'm really happy we've gotten this done. So let's isolate these. I actually want to double check. Yeah, there is geometry up here, which we don't want. So let's get rid of all this geometry on the top. And what we can do is select both of these and then just trace around it with a cut tool. Nothing new. Once again, like, we could totally use the Boolean tool, but you guys saw what happened when we did it with the cylinder and cylinder. Sometimes the cleanup is just not worth the potential save time. Like, this just sort of ensures that it's going to turn out all right. So I'm just tracing. And we could have cleaned up our geometry ahead of time, which probably would have saved us some vertices to merge. But just for the sake of this model, knowing that this isn't a low poly or anything, and we're going to have to redo a lot of this stuff, I don't mind. Like if this was the final model, of course, I'd probably do that ahead. But for this, for this piece specifically, like this is all going to be more or less redone. Oh man, did I not drag this back to the right place? I guess I'm just going to eyeball it for now. That kind of sucks. Yeah, I guess I did move that. Okay, well let's recenter this piece. Oh, I think that's what it was. Maybe I moved it after hitting center pivot, but with this being unsymmetrical now, it's not quite fully centered. I want it to be centered off of this piece hanging down, so I moved my pivot to the center of that, moved that to the center of this, and that should work for us just fine. So let's go ahead and delete. Yep, and now we can just stitch it into place. Nothing too exciting, but a mandatory part of the job. Honestly, I find it quite relaxing. It's one of those things like UVing where a lot of people, it isn't their favorite thing, but it definitely is a time and a place where you're just sort of chilling out, have some music on or something. Which is why it's not as easy for me to commentate something like this. Regardless though, we're pretty much done it, so it shouldn't be a big deal. Cool. We can now mesh, combine, merge vertices. Seems that this got uncentered at some point too. Interesting. I guess, yeah, now this is cutting through more. Well, I guess this is just going to have to be a bit thinner. Which is fine. You can thicken it out on this end. And then stick that in there. Just gonna round this out because I dropped the height of it a bit. Sweet. Okay. One continuous piece. We're gonna have to do the same on this side. But you guys know, like, it's just a literal exact repeat. So I'm gonna have even less to talk about with this one. Just a quick trace. So what else is new, guys? What else is going on? If you haven't already, I'd love for you guys to check out my Twitter or even email me some of your progress so far. As much as I love seeing everyone's final results, which I hope you guys send me once you have done something with this tutorial or picked up any techniques, I love to see kind of like the progress along the way as well. So if you are following along, feel free to send me a message or a tweet or something with some of your work. I'd love to check it out. Just wrapping back around. And closing that off so that we can delete this face on the bottom. And these guys as well. Okay, let's get to snapping. 1, 2, okay, that's one side. So this is going to conclude these little attachment parts on the side. And another thing I want to comment on about breaking your complex models down into little pieces is what's nice about that is you have these little sort of achievements and little accomplishments sprinkled throughout. Like with this, knowing that this is done, I feel like a natural pause, a natural break, and I can be like, okay, I did that part. It's cool to like call the video over or take a little breather or like see an actual piece that's done, so I know I'm gaining some progress. Let's go ahead and combine these and merge the verts. But yeah, it's just like with this whole piece done, like just looking at it isolated, this is a pretty large component, and it's totally complete and we don't have to add anything else to it. So we know that we're heading in the right direction. With that done, the next part we still have these little blue pieces and the red pieces that we're going to add in, but those should definitely be a lot faster. There's not as much going on with them. Then we have the pole that connects between the two, and then we're right back into it with number 4 where we left off. We're going to be tackling this now that we have the scale of everything down, and we can move on. We're have a much better goal and a much clearer vision as to what we're doing, and with that part completed, we're definitely heading in the right direction. So thank you guys for watching this part. Hopefully you learned something, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in the next part of the tutorial. See ya.